Pop Culture Pastor.
Okay, Cody. This podcast, I know it to some people it may not be much. There's a little shimmy in the steering wheel, but we got a subwoofer under the back seat that really can make a racket.
That it can.
The whole scene of what is it with two dudes in a car in this show, Justified City Primeval? It's just gold. Every time there's two dudes in a car and they're having a conversation, it's just great.
It is, and I love that. I think that it wouldn't happen in most other places, but since Detroit has like all the auto companies there, like cars are important, and Boyd knows his vehicles, or at least their sound systems.
Boyd Holbrook, the actor.
Yeah.
See, you're going to confuse people because they're going to think you're like, oh, Boyd's back. Like, no.
Clement.
He's talking about Clement.
But Boyd Holbrook deserves to be acknowledged every time he's on screen.
That he does. Welcome. This is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs. We're watching Justified City Primeval. My name's Dave. Cody's here.
Yes.
And we're going to recap and review episode 6 of Justified City Primeval. Adios.
Great title, by the way.
Yeah. Throughout this episode, I noticed there's running themes of, and there's been kind of in the background of this whole series with Clement, especially music, and with Sweetie. And there's been this music background. And so this conversation that they're having at the beginning of this episode in this beater of a car, which I have great emotional response for, because yeah. I also once had a beater with a subwoofer under the back seat that made quite a racket that I had to hold the door shut when we went around turns because the door didn't latch right and would come busting open on a turn.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, I had some cars like this, but Sweetie seems to think it's important because it needs the tape deck.
Now, I did have a 96 Dodge Neon.
Oh, wow.
That I did put a nice stereo system in. Like, I bought it at a garage sale from a pastor.
The car or the tape deck?
The sound system in the whole.
Okay.
Like, a pastor was moving and, like, he was selling stuff. And he's like, when I was younger, I thought this was important. And I'm like, well, I think it's important because this Dodge Neon's a pile of doo-doo. So let's class it up.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I'm with Clement. The radio's important. I don't know about the tape deck though. Like, what are the odds in this day and age of him finding like a 1980s? What did he say? It was like pre-90.
Yeah, pre-90s.
Finding a pre-90s car with a working tape deck, and if it was working, how long would it be working? And then where's Holmes getting all the cassette tapes?
He probably bought them when Walmart's like, we're not selling these anymore. They're 50% off.
I see Clement Mansell out there, raiding storage containers, like or those storage facilities, just digging into boxes. Or maybe he does. Maybe he's just a garage sailor. Maybe he does do the garage sales.
Garage sales are where it's at, folks.
And he picks up cassette tapes and VHS tapes and all sorts of outdated things.
Yeah, I know several people that like vinyl for them before like records had made a comeback, because now it's like hip. If you have a record player and you buy the album. But before that, I knew several people that were like, oh, you got to go to the head shop over here, and they have the best vinyls that you can buy. And I'm like, I don't have a record player. Why are you trying to sell this to me?
Let's go ahead and get into the episode, and let's talk about Clement Mansell and Sweetie first.
Yeah.
Because, well, to start off the episode, we get a scene with David Cross, who plays Bulldozer. Bulldozer what? What's his name? Pete? No.
Bob.
Bulldozer Bob. I knew it was one syllable. I should get credit for that. Bulldozer Bob, and he's having a conversation with a guy named Lonnie, who appears to be just a loser, but I guess Lonnie can handle himself a little bit. Lonnie is what you might call someone he's a guy who gets things done. And he contracts Lonnie to get his painting back. Now, the painting is kind of a star of this episode in a lot of ways. The painting pops up in multiple storylines here. And the first one is that old Bulldozer Bob wants his painting back. He gets Lonnie to get it back and very delicately and eloquently says, I don't care how you get it back. You got me? Wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge.
Yeah. And so a lot of this episode is our guy Lonnie kind of moving around trying to figure out where this guy is. Now
it's Bert.
Bulldozer Bert, not Bulldozer Bob.
See, I was close with my B name, but it's Bert.
I mean, who even cares? He's barely in the show. He wouldn't be important at all except it's David Cross.
Tobias.
Hey, it's like the show's great, but I don't need to know. You really don't need to know down every character's whole name.
Oh yeah, like I kept thinking we're going to get more Albanians.
Yeah, well, let's be really honest. The story is not the star of the show in this season of whatever this is. And we know, like, look, I know there's been complaints online about this show. I know not everybody's loving it. I am really loving it, Cody.
Oh, yeah.
And I assume, because the things you said, you're loving it. But for me, and I'm assuming for you, it's been about the performances.
Literally, Boyd Holbrook is dominating as bad guy Boyd, a.k.a. Clement.
Yeah, he's fantastic in this episode. Timothy Oliphant as Raylan's always fantastic. That's why we watch the show. And he's great in this episode. Our dude Wendell gets some more lines. Two dudes in a car having a conversation. And he's good in this episode. Lawyer Carolyn's great. Ingenue.
So there's like good lines and like witty things that happen within the story for the season. But like so far, the story, like you said, isn't the main focus. It's just really the individuals and the performances that are happening in those roles.
Yeah, and it's about the interactions, not the story at large most of the time, I think. Now, I could see how for some people that wouldn't be their thing, and I get that, but you know, entertainment is it's subjective. It's subjective. And you're going to like things. I just like this. I like this style of show. I like the interactions. And I like watching actors and actresses do their thing. And this is full of a lot of it. And we get this guy Lonnie added to it, who on the surface appears to be like kind of this, you know, white trashish guy in a mobile home loser dude, who you start piecing together like, no, this dude's capable. This dude has some things he's capable. We find out he got fired from Bulldozer Bert's construction things for stealing, but they make quite clear in that first conversation it wasn't because he wasn't capable.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we see is him taking this mission to go find Clement and get this painting back. And the first thing he does is, you know, he kind of finds out that Sweetie and this guy are together. Now we think he doesn't know Sweetie, but that evaporates quickly when he shows up to Sweetie's bar. He waits for him to come down. Sweetie shows up, and it's clear these two men know each other.
Well, he for sure knows who Sweetie is and has identified. I've heard for years, if you need help, you go to Sweetie.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's funny, so Sweetie and Clement working together. Well, I think it's, to be fair, we've known for quite a while or been afraid that this was going to end poorly for Sweetie. But it's been interesting to watch them work together. And it was probably good for Clement because Clement is allowed to be reined in ever so slightly by Sweetie. And Sweetie, in this conversation with Lonnie, you really get to see what he's really good at.
Oh, yeah.
What he brings to the table. And what he brings is this ability to sit down with anybody and have a rational, calm, cool conversation. And more so that Sweetie is always redefining his mission, right? So dangling a line in front of Sweetie, you don't have to ask him to take it, right? He's gonna identify ways that he can extricate himself from a situation maybe he doesn't want to be in. And maybe he's gotten there with Clement after Clement at the beginning of this episode kills yet another dude who they're trying to extort money from.
He just fell.
He just jumped over. He fell over. That scene was hilarious, by the way. And I felt bad for laughing.
That was a brief moment of feeling bad. And I'm like, they nailed it.
So it all the whole episode kind of springboards from this Lonnie guy's mission to find Clement. And Sweetie, once he talks to this guy, says, I'm gonna take this time. Sweetie sort of looks at it as like divine intervention, right? Like, oh, this is my way to keep making this money, but extricate myself of Clement.
Yes.
And so what follows is an elaborate sting set up with the Detroit PD, because they're working on the same sort of angle here, but unknowingly, that it's unbeknownst to both parties, because Raylan has gone to the new acting lead of the investigation, our girl Maureen,
who's still alive,
and saying, hey, what if I was to tell you we got this book that they're in possession of, or understand we know that they have this book, and what if we use that? And what if we set up this sting? We know that this lady's in it, so he gets information from lawyer Carolyn, knowing that this lady she is in maybe competition with to get this judge seat,
the prosecutor who
plays the politics. And the Detroit PD says, yeah, let's make a play. So they go to what's this girl's name? Diane?
Yep.
Yeah, Diane, who's the prosecutor, and they basically trash her career. Right? I mean,
she's done.
Basically, you're like, hey, we know you're in this book. We know you took payouts or you gave hush money. And I just assume that all of Detroit politics is hush money after watching this show.
Yes.
And so they kind of coerce her into working with him to draw out Clement, who they believe has this judge's little black book. Raylan more than believes it. He knows it because lawyer Carolyn has told him.
And he trusts her.
Now, we'll come back to lawyer Carolyn here in a little bit, because I want to have a conversation about what she's doing as well. But it all kind of culminates in this big, well, I don't even know how to, it's a mess in this park. So it's a park. There's tons of innocent people. They've got the prosecutor lady there. She's all mic'd up. She keeps playing with her earpiece. They have to tell her, if you keep touching your earpiece, they know it's an earpiece.
They do.
Yes. And so we'll talk about that here in a minute too, because make a long story short, what happens is Clement shows up, but he doesn't have a gun and he doesn't have the book. And so they don't have anything. They don't have anything on him. And I got Cody, what did you think of this?
So he is just super lucky, because literally
that's Raylan's takeaway.
He says, I have a bad run of folks trying to rip me off. And that's his justification, his logic for, yeah, I didn't bring that page with me to this meetup.
Yeah. I don't know if I believe it. Do you think someone's informing him? Do you think someone's with him, or do you just agree with Raylan that he's lucky?
I think that he's lucky that So the way Raylan words it, like, he's just enough chaos that people are acting out of character so much that he just lucks into his situations.
Mm-hmm.
That what you and I normally do on our typical days where our stress level might be anywhere from 3 to 5 on a scale 1 to 10 versus when our stress level is at like an 8 or a 9 or a 10. It's 9-day difference. And so most of the time we might be anywhere from 3 to 7, and 7 we might do a little bit that's out of character, but most of the time there's a range that most people fall into. But when chaos ensues, we can go up to a 9 or a 10 real fast.
Yeah. So you think that Clement just got lucky here?
Oh yeah.
You don't think that Sweetie overplayed his hand and he knew it from that point?
No.
Okay.
I think that in my mind, he probably was wanting to do extra extortion. Like, oh, you paid this much. Well, we're just going to hold on to this in case you step out of line with me in the future because you are in a high political position. Because he knows that this person's a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, oh, if I hold on to this, it's going to play out good. And if she doesn't give me the full amount, I don't give her the page. And I just walk away with the money and shoot her dead if that's the case. But he didn't even bring a gun. So, yeah.
So what do you make of Wendell and Raylan's conversation right before the sting then? Where Raylan basically asks Wendell point blank the possibility that somebody's feeding Clement information. Someone like maybe in the police department. And Wendell kind of toes a line a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. He has an interesting answer, which is to say, like, I don't know. I kind of took his answer to be like, well, yeah, probably, but I don't get involved.
Yeah.
He's not going to step across that line and accuse, I guess, was the takeaway from that.
He's not going to entertain it because if you go down that rabbit hole, anyone could be the one feeding off the information.
Yeah.
And the likelihood within Detroit PD that there's dirty cops somewhere, it's fairly likely.
Yeah. So it's like he's not denying that all of, like, Detroit is what's good about this show is Justified was always like a Western, right? It's always like a modern Western. And in Detroit, you have Tombstone, right? You have the place where the legal side of things isn't what's in charge, because even the legal people, even the cops and the lawyers and the prosecutors,
and the judge,
they're all seemingly in on the game, and you don't know who to trust. And the way I see this going for Raylan is like, I feel like he's going to be the last man standing in a way where he's going to, I have this feeling that he's going to start being maybe chased from all sides, in a manner of speaking. That there are going to be people that he thinks are on his side now, that he's going to find out something is not. And I thought that's where we were going with the Wendell conversation. Not Wendell. I don't think Wendell's in it. But I think Wendell is afraid to step across those lines for a reason.
Yeah.
He doesn't admit he's afraid. He says it's more about loyalty and about, like, I'm not going to be the snitch, in so many words. But it's just interesting to me. That conversation was interesting, especially when what plays out.
Now, if Maureen ends up being an insider for Manziel, I might lose it, because that would be so out of left field.
Yeah, I don't think my money would be on her.
But that would be like the M. Night twist if this show was trying to be M. Night-esque.
That would be a crazy twist. But so basically what happens is it looks like this is just going to be an all-time cluster in this moment. Manziel's shaking down the prosecutor. And then you got Lonnie
with
approaching
his knife.
with his switchblade or whatever that is, that knife, and he's about to stab him right in front of it, God and everyone in that park. And then the cops choose the moment. What's really interesting is Lonnie might have taken care of this whole thing, and Raylan might have gotten his wish. And that's where he gets is this dude just lucky type stuff. Because obviously Raylan didn't know Lonnie was there, but Clement was luckier than even Raylan knows.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would have been a chaotic moment, and it would have been terrible, but also good for him. Clement would have been down, and that would have been that. Lonnie would have been going off to prison. I don't know. What happens, though, is the cops rush in. Lonnie, who didn't get Sweetie's message in time, is aware enough to see what's going on and can, discreetly puts his weapon away and just walks on by. Meanwhile, the cops think they're getting Clement, but he's got nothing and they got nothing to hold him on. But they do have a great conversation, does Clement and Raylan. And I thought for a minute we were going to get this really cool showdown that we kind of think's coming, but we did not. We did not. Did you think that it was going to go down there for a second?
I did not, just because I know that there's still 2 more episodes, and it's like you got to have Clement for at least the next episode and a half. So,
yeah.
But I could see Raylan's wheels turning. Like,
yeah, Clement asks him, wouldn't it be something if we had ourselves a little shootout, which I think is what everybody watching was ready for. And he says, don't think they got a range where you're headed. Because at this point, Raylan's still cocky in this feeling that they've got him. And Clement says, I'm not talking about any range. I'm thinking on the streets just when you least expect it. So he goes back to threatening. And Raylan says, I'll ask the chief, see if he says it's okay. And there's just this really cool conversation between the two where Batman thinks he's got him, but the Joker still knows he has the upper hand here. And you feel like, obviously, this showdown's going to come. That this showdown's going to happen. And Clement's trying to bait him into it. He even says, as he's walking away, who is it? Is it Marine who's kind of talking to Raylan? He's like, he wants you to follow him. He wants this. Don't do it.
I was rooting for him to do it.
Well, let's talk about Raylan for a second, because we're 6 full episodes into this show and he hasn't shot anybody.
He hasn't, because it wasn't justified.
TM trademark. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not justified, but is Raylan different?
Well,
and is that the point? And I've kind of wondered, why are we seeing this maturing Raylan in the law enforcement area? And I wonder, and I'll let you talk whatever you're about to say. I wonder, is it because he's finally in a place where he's trusting the system, and is the system about to let him down?
So that's a possibility. I also wonder if it's a bit of a fish out of water, because since he's been in Detroit, things have been topsy-turvy from the way they should be in his mind. And then you have Clement Manzel, who every time they turn around has done something horrific, and yet life's good for Clement. He just gets to sit in his kimono, in his whitey tighties, and life's good for him. Nothing's going bad. And so I think that he's still trying to get the lay of the land a little bit. I also think that for the first handful of episodes, he's really just wanting to get back to Florida. Mm-hmm. But now this has become a personal vendetta that I got to see this guy come in for justice or else.
Yeah. And so they got nothing. Clement walks away from this whole chaotic situation. Let's talk about Lawyer Carolyn for a second, because I'm troubled by some of the things, some of what we get in Lawyer Carolyn this episode. Her and Raylan still clearly have a relationship going on. But we get these little signs that Lawyer Carolyn is definitely picking a side. Let's talk about this. She says this: There are things I want to do with that book, and none of them have anything to do with what's legal, but everything to do with what's just. Let me ask you this, Cody. Do you agree with her? Is what she want to do with that just? Or is it just revenge?
Like the example she shares from like 1963 in the South, that was justice. They were seeking justice, and it was just what they did. It might not have been legal, but it was just. They wanted equality. I can see how she can twist it in her mind that what she is doing is just because everyone else has played with this broken system forever, including the prosecutor who was playing politics and was taking bribes and all that. And so she just wants what's hers. And if the little black book takes some of the people down and helps her get into position to be a not corrupt judge, she sees it as that's just. But in my mindset, it's not untainted justice. There is the taint of some corruption upon it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because she says, I'm going to play the game. But then once you do that, if the game is crooked, like, so you're saying the world is broken, but then you want to play the game of the world. It's interesting that she puts this in the frame of the civil rights movement, because one Dr. Martin Luther King would not have agreed with her methods here, as he more than anyone else said the ways of what we would see, the ways of Jesus, to say, no, don't take part in the broken system. The way to beat the broken system is to not be broken. Mm-hmm. But instead she says, no, I'm going to take part in the broken system because I have the upper hand and I'm going to benefit from it. But in the process of doing it, she's being broken.
Yes.
And so that's the big conflict that we get with lawyer Carolyn. And I find it really interesting because we choose this all the time. Like, there's a reason there's a Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, because we don't choose that road often. Humanity doesn't. And in Lawyer Carolyn, we're getting this, I don't know, it's almost tragic in a way, because Lawyer Carolyn's a good person. She is a good person.
It is setting up for a Shakespearean downfall.
Yeah. It's a Greek tragedy in a lot of ways, because she is a good, decent person, but she's also someone who's been pressed to the limit. She's been broken by a broken world, and now she's got the upper hand, and she's seen an opportunity, and she's going to take full advantage of it. But in the meantime, in the process of doing that, she's going to sacrifice this being above it all type place where she could have been, and instead now is going to get down in the muck. And this is why we wonder, like, she makes the list of like, well, is she going to be okay through this whole thing?
And like, even her relationship with Raylan kind of borders on is this ethical?
Yeah.
And now that she is sharing that, well, I do know from an unnamed source that Clement part of the time has possession of the Black Book, and that a certain prosecutor's name is in it. Like, so it's not her client that shared this information to her, that particular client, Clement, but like, she's giving them information about her client that would potentially put him away.
Yeah.
And so she's playing a dangerous game.
She is, but we don't have to talk about and wonder if she's going to be the first casualty, because we had our first casualty.
Lonnie!
No, I mean, Lonnie shows up for one episode, he's gone, and the quickness and the emotionless with which that happens is stunning.
Oh, yeah.
Because Clement very, very much stuns Sweetie in how quickly he just offs this guy. And in that, we've seen we've seen pieces of this. They play like the one at the beginning of this episode for like kind of humor, even though he's throwing a guy off a roof, even though we don't see it. So it's kind of played for uneasy giggles maybe. But in this, we see the madness and the danger and just the flat out scariness of a Joker-esque villain where he's truly sociopathic. He really has no care for life in any form whatsoever. And if we could have a moment of silence for our first casualty of our list of characters who would die, it is Sweetie, which not surprising. I'm sad to see Sweetie go. But like this whole episode seemed like it was ratcheting to a bad place for Sweetie. And especially when Clement showed up at this sting and he takes notice of Lonnie walking by. Once that happens, and then he shows up at the bar where Lonnie's at and Sweetie's at, even when he kills Lonnie, I didn't for 1 second think, well, it's over now. Phew.
Would have been nice.
Yeah. But he shoots Sweetie after Sweetie has gone to unplug the jukebox. A weird scene.
I love this scene so much. I'm like, oh, it's happening.
Just tell him he can sing good. Would someone, for the love of God, just tell Clement, yeah, that's really good.
Jack White has nothing on you, buddy.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, when he started singing on that recording of what's the name of the song?
Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes.
I was literally about falling out of my chair at that point, even though I'm like kind of glued to the screen because I know what's about to happen. And I'm just like screaming at the screen, like, Sweetie, just tell him he can sing. Just tell him. And he, of course, won't. He goes to unplug the jukebox before all that, realizes the gun is gone because his young cohabitant of the apartment and of the bar has, by the behest of lawyer Carolyn, absconded with the gun to keep it quote unquote safe. And so Sweetie's emergency backup plan is gone.
Lucky thing for Clement Mansell,
right? Yeah. It's interesting how that happens. And Clement, they have this one last little conversation where Clement says, close your eyes for me. And isn't it interesting that Sweetie says, I got to go out listening to your honky chicken fat cover song. Why does he use that insult? The same one Clement like seemingly made up about Raylan? Did he get that from Sweetie? Is that a Sweetieism that he just used?
I don't know.
And he says, nah, you got to look me in the eye. And then, of course, he does and shoots him. And Sweetie's gone.
Which before that, like, Clement uses the line that Miles Davis used for Sweetie. Like, your big ears can surely hear and tell me if I'm good or not. And then, like, even with a gun pointed to your head, you can't lie to me. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh. That was delivered well, my friend.
Yeah. This sets up some interesting things going forward. Trinell, who is Sweetie's, I guess, boyfriend.
That's the way I took it.
Yeah, which they've been real coy about saying what that relationship was. At times, I'd guess, well, he could be his son, I suppose, because he's really young compared to Sweetie.
Yeah.
But it turns out they're together.
Has a great mustache.
He has a fabulous mustache. But he has the gun. And he knows who's responsible for this. That puts him into play. This is interesting into this show is he becomes kind of a wild card in this. And him and Carolyn are in the know of all of this. So you got people out there that knows exactly, and Clement probably thinks that the gun was in that bar. So that's interesting. Then setting up moving forward, all the stuff with lawyer Carolyn and Raylan and where that's going.
And there's a big thing we haven't talked about that might spell danger for someone else.
Yeah. Who's at the top of the list now for
It's
danger.
Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy's in trouble. Sandy, there's a wonderful scene where she walks into an art dealer with this painting, and you can tell by the look on the art dealer's face that he's like he's dubious, and it's going to have art theft written all over it. So you wonder where that's going, because we don't really get a clear sign of what's happening here.
/ if she didn't run that by Clement and she's just trying to take the money and maybe fly to Aruba by herself.
Yeah.
Oh, Sandy, you're in trouble.
Yeah, so I'm interested. I'm interested to see where this is all going. I think we need to readjust our rankings now for who's the most likely next victim.
I think we should call Chris Isaac, because they're all playing a wicked game.
They are. And it seems like we're building to, we've got 2 episodes left. And it seems like, the penultimate episode is usually, in any of these kind of shows, is usually the one where a lot of the action happens. So I'm wondering if we're going to get our showdown next week. Our Old West, Raylan, Clement, the good, the bad, and the ugly moment.
So if it follows the last season of Justified, I'm pretty sure that showdown didn't happen with Sam Elliott till the last episode. But that I think this episode coming up, we're going to get a lot more climactic action / deaths to move Raylan into a place for the showdown.
Yeah, it makes me, I'm curious, because I wonder if there's multiple storylines that have to wrap up. And I don't see the Clement one going all the way to the end, or maybe I don't see it being wrapped up. Maybe Clement moves out of this whole situation to be seen again later.
That would be bananas. Because
the conversation with Wendell in the car makes me nervous that there's some wickedness in the justice system in Detroit that that Raylan has yet to find out, that could turn all this on its ear, but we'll just have to see.
/ we have his daughter that's still angry, that hasn't talked to him for like 6 episodes or 4 episodes.
Yeah, is that really not going to pay off in any way?
Maybe not. The Albanians are out there somewhere.
Yeah, the Albanians, that was a 1 episode thing too. There's been some hiccups in the story, to be sure, but mostly I'm enjoying it.
Or they are building for a huge cluster of everyone and everything coming crashing down on Raylan.
That's what I'm afraid of. And Raylan and Sandy, because I would put Sandy at the top of my odds to not make it out of the next episode list.
She's at the top. Maureen, I could see getting killed in Crossfire.
Yeah,
those are my 2.
Well, and now Trinell enters that list as well.
Yes.
And Lawyer Carolyn, I feel like something tragic could happen to her, because she's chosen this road. She's chosen this road of, I'm going to fight brokenness with brokenness, and I just don't know that that's going to work out well.
Yeah. Trinell, I probably have at number 3. Wild card, Carolyn's ex. Does he show back up?
Yeah.
Does he get caught up in something?
There's lots of loose threads, and I kind of wonder how they're going to tie all this together, but we'll see. They got 2 episodes left, and I'm expecting next episode to be pretty action-packed. Cody, who's the winner of this episode?
I'm going to have to go with Clement again.
Yeah. Yeah, Boyd Holbrook gets a chance to shine in this episode. I think even kind of more elevated than he has. They're starting to build that to a crescendo.
Oh yeah,
his just exactly how formidable an opponent he is for Raylan, and maybe Raylan's most formidable opponent.
Like if Sweetie hadn't died this episode, he was close, because the way he pulls Clement Manzel's strings to make it seem like it's his idea to go shake down the prosecutor. Sweetie delivered that perfectly.
Yeah, he did.
And had it set up, but then the whole Clement killing Sweetie scene sealed the deal.
Yeah, special shout out to Vondi Curtis Hall, who played Sweetie so well. An amazing character actor. He's been in so many things and
Gone but not forgotten.
Played him great until the very, very tragic end of our guy Sweetie. My winner would also be Boyd Holbrook, the actor who plays Clement Mansell. Who's the loser of the episode, Cody?
Sandy, because I feel like she really wasn't in the episode that long.
She's cracking at the seams too,
and I think we've set up for her character to be next.
Yeah, she's starting to stretch at the seams, and it seems like she's not gonna be able to take it, and Clement's gonna have to make a decision with her, which won't end well with Sandy. My loser of the episode is gonna be Lonnie.
No.
Because Lonnie, they spend all this time saying like, oh, he's capable. He's a capable dude just for Clement Mansell to off him. And that's it.
Poor Lonnie.
Yeah.
Like, he was very intriguing. And then he was gone.
We hardly knew you. And you seemed capable, but you were no match for Clement Mansell, the Oklahoma Wild Man. How many Stetson hats out of 10 do you give this episode?
If the last 5 minutes hadn't happened, it would have been 7.5 or 8, but I'm going up to an 8.5 because action's moving and Clement is Clementing.
Yeah, it was good. I'd say it was about a half step down from last week. I don't think it kind of continued enough. It almost did. The whole park scene and the sting was wildly entertaining, and then you feel the same way Raylan does. Is he just going to walk away? So I'm just going to watch him walk away.
Yeah, you are.
And that was the same thing. I was like, right? We're just going to watch him walk away? No, something's got to happen. But I think, like I said, it was a little deke they threw at us. And I think next episode's going to be the showdown. So we'll see.
We shall.
Yeah. You'll see it with us. Hey, thank you everyone for hanging out with us and watching Justified City Primeval with us. We'll see you next week on Watch Alongs. Have a good one.